Hey everybody, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program RP-0. This is our Twitch recap from last week. Sure. And we're taking a break from our testing for just a few minutes so we can talk about our Kerbal Jobs program. This, as you know, is the SKS Heavy space shuttle with a full cargo bay with labs and solar panels and every scientific experiment we could wedge into the poor thing because, well, we're broke. And the 3 Kerbal to low Earth orbit contracts are pretty much our best bet at making money. We just got to put 3 Kerbals in orbit, specified parameters, usually a minimum and a maximum. Leave them there for like 2 weeks, and then bring them home successfully, and we get paid. And the shuttles are relatively cheap to iterate. They have a pretty quick turnaround time as long as we have one in the stable from which to retrofit and install our new cargo. Our cargo on this one is pretty substantial, not mass-wise, but, well, build time-wise. We don't really have spare labs sitting around. So the turnaround on this is going to be like 4 months or so for our KCT to build this out, but once we have it up and running, we're going to deploy a crew of 6 Kerbals to a low Earth polar orbit to run a bunch of science that I don't think we've actually collected from most biomes around the Earth, and then run it through labs for maximum science output, because we also get paid for radioing in science now, which is, you know, just kind of like an added benefit to the, let's see, I think the contract is worth 600 grand total. We're going to spend 400 of it up front to build this out. We'll get refunded almost 200 of it when we return the orbiter. So that's our profit margin, and really any science we radio in is also pure profit. So that will absolutely help us with the very, very expensive next generation Mars landing surface installation project that we have been working on for, what's it been, 2 months now? Something like that. It's really been all we've been doing on these live streams for quite a while now. So it's we have to pay for it somehow, and this is really our best bet to do so, because contracts at this late stage in such an early version of KSP are kind of few far betweenish. As far as the lucrative ones, we did screw up that uncrewed landing on Callisto, and that's what put us in this mess to begin with, but we don't really have a bunch of those contracts just sitting around that we can just go on ahead and use. So we just added in our last few sciencey bits for experiments, and then action grouped them all in one radio and action group for best efficiency. We'll pin up the cargo bays and then go ahead and order one of these to be built, which takes all of our money. We're down to almost $500,000 at this point, which is super broke. So with that spent, we might as well spend more money, because that's how we're funding this whole thing. So we're going to focus on the supply rover, which has been the really the problem child of this entire method of landing things. And so we're just going to do one quick test. I think we've got the spinny thing resolved, and that was done by just inverting the probe core so that it faces up, which really that should have been done from the word go. So there's our deorbit burn to put us on course, setting our periapsis to about 70-75 kilometers. I think is where I'm having the most luck with these deorbits, generally, give or take. Although if we want to do targeted landings, we might actually have to set ourselves on an impact trajectory. I will be doing more testing with that later. I think we're going to skip testing on these for our next live stream so that I can take a break from it and come back with renewed vigor and fresh eyes. Generally does tend to help me a whole lot in solving a lot of these problems. If I can just walk away from them for a little while, maybe I'll have a better idea or think of something that I may have overlooked beforehand. So we are going to chew through as much of this RCS fuel as we can manage and keep our AOA as high up as we can, so we can mitigate as much of that vertical speed as possible. Although if you've watched any of the last, 20, 30 episodes or so, you probably already know this. This part of the descent is pure procedure. We've got it nailed down as far as what we need to do and how we need to orient this thing in order to maximize its drag efficiency through the Martian pseudo atmosphere, and hopefully not have any structural part failures, I guess, which is really kind of weirding me out. So one of the other things I wanted to take a look at is how Mech Jeb's landing guidance will predict our landing site, and where our actual landing site kind of turns up in relation to that. We do want to try to target these landings as much as possible. Although, like I said before, I think that's really going to mean that we're going to have to set that periapsis a whole lot lower, like on the ground, so that we could try to get some more accurate predictions. Mech Jeb doesn't even think that we're going to land, because, well, Mech Jeb should never really be trusted with any monicum of responsibility whatsoever. So physics warp, yeah, still creates the wobble. Again, probably going to have to do the live landing of these things in real time, which means there's probably going to be like 2 straight months sometime towards the end of summer or middle of summer, where that's all we do is land one of these and hopefully get it on the dirt, and then set up the Mech Jeb rover guidance to drive it to where it needs to be overnight, because I'm not gonna just sit around and drive these things manually. That would be uncivilized. Is that the word I'm looking for? Not entirely sure. Anyway, so we're trying to speed through as much of this, I guess, descent phase as possible, because, like I said before, this is all pretty much procedure. We're going to have to adjust this procedure, so I might be more inclined to pay more attention to it on some of our more targeted practice runs, but currently, yeah. Mech Jeb says we're going to be way, way over there in the daylight, and given our altitude and speed, I'm not convinced. But I don't know. I did just read up on how to use the mark feature through Mech Jeb, and that might actually prove useful, at least in establishing our downrange cross range. And really, if we can get the line correct, like if we're going to fly directly over our target, we can use that mark feature, knowing how much distance we will travel downrange before landing, to kind of aid in getting this thing to, I mean, within 100 kilometers, I think would be great. Within 200 kilometers would be acceptable. I really have absolutely no realistic intention of this thing landing within 25-50 meters of target like we do on the moon sometimes, or at least we did before that program kind of got mothballed because we killed too many Kerbals. We may yet revitalize the lunar program, especially considering that we can include taking 3 Kerbals to low Earth orbit as part of our cycling crew out to the moon, and that could be worth a good deal of money to us, but it is time consuming to do launch and then rendezvous with Kawaii Potato Station, launch from Kawaii Potato Station to the moon and perform orbit and rendezvous with Tremonia Station there, and then descend to the moon. I really need to double check to see if Tremonia Station is within the Kerbal to low lunar orbit contract spec, because we could use that to generate some money for the space program and hopefully pay off a few of these. We're trying to keep the mass of these drop pods in such that they can be launched on a DN6, which is kind of our standard now heavy-duty lifter. They're kind of walking the very top end of its usable tonnage to Mars transfer. And while it is not a cheap lift vehicle by any means, it's a whole lot cheaper than the Big Boy BPR, which could probably hurl 1.5 of these at Mars without even breaking a sweat. Maybe 2 if we were able to make some accommodations for that. But it's it's such an expensive machine. I would really prefer not to launch on it, and it also takes a very, very long time to build. We don't have the spare parts stockpile like we do for the DN series, and so we're going to see kind of what numbers we're looking at later on in this episode. But we're coming up on our engine light and descent procedure, and so for all of that exciting stuff, I will turn you over to old me. Yeah, we got 1689 meters per second. We're only down to 21. Chutes are still red. We did not bleed off nearly enough speed. This is kind of a problem, so let's light it up. We need to ensure a good landing for this test. But boom. Yeah, let that sync rate just pause for a second. Chutes are in the yellow. Come on, let's get down to 1 kilometer per second before all these deployments kick off. That would be awesome. What is your trigger altitude, friend? I thought for sure you... well, that answered that question. And as soon as the secondary goes, which should be right at 10 kilometers... Mark... Oh, 5, 4, 3... Oh yeah, we are super, super slow enough. Let's go ahead and kill that. Where's the primary? Or really, where's the secondary? Deploy chute. 7 kilometers. Alright, we gotta get a move on. Woo! Wiggles! The wiggles! Oh boy, that is interesting! Alright, on 3, 2, 1, goodbye, top shell! Oh no! You! Well, and that will conclude this test. Yeah, accelerate. Get down faster, friend. Because this is a failed ass test. Smush! Oh man. The problem, as it turned out, was entirely that the secondary chute, which is really there for emergencies, its deployment altitude was set to 1 kilometer and not 10 kilometers, which was subsequently also its auto cut altitude. So that chute, while showing good and all these other things, was never going to deploy. But the added drag from that chute is enough to overpower the drag from the inverted waffle cone that is the top shell. That creates a lot of horrible aerodynamic instabilities that kind of caused all of that shaking about. So as long as all the chutes deploy, we should not have a problem separating the upper Aero shell, which is something that was unique to that last test. So we have made the requisite changes to the parachute parameters, and now we will just jump in and go ahead and try to perform this test one more time, hopefully with a much more successful result. And so we'll just pick up the pace here a little bit so that we can get around to kind of the more crucial part of this test, because again, we're trying to keep this as close to the procedure as we can, maintaining that AOA, mitigating as much as our vertical sync rate as we can. I think we got it down to below 25 at one point here, although it is starting to pick up again, and we are having a little bit of trouble maintaining that AOA as we get down into slightly thicker bits of the atmosphere. But as we burn off more of that RCS fuel and come just a little bit lighter, although the RCS fuel, as far as a percentage of our total mass, is pretty insignificant. But as our vertical sync rate does start to pick up a little bit, eventually we'll just kind of give up and put ourselves flat into it, although we're going to take a rotation to bring fresh thrusters into it. But I will turn you back over to Old Mean right here after engine ignition and parachute deploy. There we go. Secondaries, primaries should go right at 10. We'll kill this engine and see what happens. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Deploy. There it is. All right, let's go ahead and ditch our lower. 3, 2, 1, fire. Fire. Look at that. We are stable. Holy hell. Engine light solid. We can kill that. We're just going to let ourselves drift down to about 5-ish kilometers, and we'll shed the upper and go to... Oh, you know what we should be doing right now? Flate. God, these need to be on an action group. Why are they not on an action group? .5. All right, let's shed the upper. Primaries deployed. Yeah, buddy. Looking solid. RCS is armed. How much fuel got bled from these suckers? Quite a lot. We still have 5 minutes of runtime, so I think we're okay. We just need to hold stable here. We'll light them up at about 1 kilometer's altitude. At just 1 altitudes. There's some stuff hitting the dirt. Where's our top arrow shell? Can we see it? That's probably directly above us, which is exactly where we want it to be. Not at all. Not at all where we want it to be. Coming out of physics warp. 1.104, 65, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. RCS, please help. We're too heavy. I should have left those engines lit, even though we didn't really need it at the time. We needed to lighten our fuel load. So we can probably reduce utilization on all of these tanks by roughly half. Hey, at least we're not spinning wildly. 11.5, 350 meters. 300 meters. 11.2. Not slowing down nearly fast enough. Shit. 250 meters. Come on, come on, come on. Give me some TWR. 200 meters. 10-6. Oh, this is going to be rough. Oh, come on. Burn fuel. Burn fuel. 90 meters. 10.2. Not slowing down. 10.1. Sub 10. Yes. Bonk. Oh god, no! No! You are doing so well! You son of a bitch! Alright, well this is actually the least bad of all the possible scenarios. So we'd spend a little time on the surface trying to use the solar array control arm to right this thing. With not too much luck. Now that we're stuck in this position, we can't get the rail on the ground. It just kind of, it all falls apart from there. So I think maybe a light of the engines there was just a bad idea. So we will decouple from the base, roll it over on top of ourselves, proceed to break everything we can, and then eventually just give up. There's certain context where this thing will beach itself, and it might just be a bit of a lost cause. So I am confident that I can land these things. I've done it in lots of simulations on my laptop, although obviously never while anyone was ever watching. That would be that would make entirely too much sense. So we're just going to try to short the fuel for our terminal descent stage by just a little bit, in hopes that the added TWR will help us slow down a little faster. I am very heavily considering removing the landing airbags there at the bottom. I think the bounce that they create is really kind of the X factor here that screws everything up and causes us to bounce just a little too high. We're also going to turn off the thrusters on the terminal descent stage, or like the final stage of this, until we need them to be turned on. Because, well, with shorting the fuel, we can't really afford to have the RCS just firing like crazy through that entire descent as we move down through the atmosphere. So that's a fuel conserving measure, I suppose. And then I guess we'll talk about the capture and launch plans. So you see I just put a heat shield there that just covers just enough of the engine section to get it through the atmosphere. This was a decision, I don't know, because a propulsive capture on this would just be ridiculous. We'd like triple our tonnage, and then there's no way it would launch on anything. So an aero capture is really our only option, and with as broad and wide as this thing is, I think we could actually pull it off. The problem I was having, even in my simulated runs, is that high dynamic pressure was breaking the aero shell and just kind of tearing it apart, and it was also causing things to explode, even shielded parts, which is, I don't know, a mystery as to why. I thought all of these things would have been rated for such an adventure, but I guess aero capturing at Mars might actually be a little harsh than a low Earth orbit descent through Earth's atmosphere. So I've actually done some testing on this front and kind of come to the conclusion that a full-size heat shield is just about the only safe way we can capture this thing into Mars orbit. Thankfully, we don't need a whole lot of a blader on that heat shield, which does save us a lot of tonnage. A whole lot of tonnage. So I think that's actually going to be the plan we take. In order to best maximize the capacities of the DN6B, we very often barely get this thing off the pad at like a 1.1 something liftoff thrust weight ratio, but end up with almost a kilometer per second left in the core fuel tank when we hit orbit, which means there's a lot of unused capacity of this vehicle that I think we could better maximize if we got off the pad a little faster. So I haven't done much research into SRBs, but I think we may take that up now and see if it doesn't kind of aid our cause a little bit. But surprisingly, on top of this fully fueled DN6B, we're still looking at 4.45 kilometers per second to use for our Mars injection burn, which puts us well within threshold. And this is, of course, with the half-size heat shield. Full-size heat shield is a little less, but I think we're still in the green as far as how this project is coming along, although with the price tag of $362,000 per launch, we're going to have to raise a lot of money, so expect some shuttle flights to low Earth orbit in the near future. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out. I really do appreciate it, and I will see all of you in the next one. So until then, see you later.